In the autumn of 2003, the southern Pantanal of Mato Grosso awakened under a whitish sky typical of the dry season. The Nakamura farm stretched over thousands of hectares near Pocone, where the Cerrado met the first floodable plains of the world's largest wetland. Sofia Nakamura, 22, had arrived there with her younger brother, Rav Nakamura, 19, for a work season on the family property. The two young people from Campo Grande had simple plans: help with the cattle management, explore the lush nature, and enjoy a few days away from the urban routine. On the morning of May 15th of that year, Sofia and Rav left the farm's main house on horseback, carrying a backpack with water and some supplies. They told the foreman Hamilton Vasconcelos that they planned to inspect a damaged fence in the region known as Baixada do Coimbra, about 15 kilometers from the main house. It was a routine task that should not take more than a few hours. The sun was starting to heat up when the two siblings followed the dirt road, passing by patches of forest and open fields where cattle grazed peacefully. No one imagined that this would be the last time Sofia and Rav would be seen alive. The foreman, Hamilton Vasconcelos, began to worry when evening arrived and the siblings did not return. He knew that region well and understood that experience. Riders like Sofia and Rav wouldn't get lost easily. Around 6 p.m., he organized a first search with a few farmhands. They covered the route the siblings should have followed, shouting their names and looking for signs of passage. They only found horse tracks on the main road, which disappeared when they reached the area where the fence was supposed to be. The night in the Pantanal brought a thick darkness, interrupting the search efforts. The next morning, the siblings' father, Geraldo Nakamura, was informed of the disappearance. He immediately contacted the Pocone Civil Police and organized a broader search operation. Helicopters flew over the region, riders covered kilometers of pasture land, and boats navigated the nearby rivers and bays. For an entire week, hundreds of people joined the search, but Sofia and Rav seemed to have simply vanished into the vast Pantanal. The horses they were riding also were never found, which further puzzled investigators. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to discover more intriguing cases like this one. The investigating officer, Asma Bradanca, began to explore all possibilities. The Pantanal, despite its beauty, concealed real dangers. Wild animals such as jaguars and caimans, quicksand areas, and the risk of accidents in the rough terrain. However, Sofia and Rav were experienced riders, familiar with the region's hazards, and carried safety gear. The possibility of an accident began to seem less likely as the days passed without any signs being found. The investigator decided to explore other lines of inquiry, including the possibility of a crime. The Nakamura farm was a prosperous property, and land disputes were not uncommon in the region. During the interrogations, 3 main suspects emerged, each with distinct motivations that could explain the siblings' disappearance. The first suspect was Igor Toriani, a neighboring farmer who had been in a legal dispute with the Nakamura family for over 5 years. The issue revolved around ownership of a 200-hectare strip of land at the boundary between the two properties. Igor claimed historical rights to the land, while the Nakamuras had legal documentation. Tensions between the families had escalated in the last few months, with mutual accusations of trespassing and cattle theft. Witnesses reported that Igor was seen having a heated argument with Geraldo Nakamura just days before the siblings disappeared. The farmer had a partial alibi. He was in Cuiabá on May 15th, but only from the afternoon onward. In the morning, employees at his farm confirmed his presence on the property, located just 20 kilometers from the area where Sofia and Rav disappeared. The second suspect was Valerio Grimaldi, a former farmhand at the Nakamura estate, who had been dismissed for cause 3 months before the disappearance. Valerio had been accused of stealing tools and selling cattle from the farm without authorization. During his dismissal, he had threatened the family, saying they would pay dearly for ruining his reputation in the region. Valerio's friends confirmed that he harbored deep resentment toward the Nakamuras and constantly spoke of revenge. On the day of the disappearance, Valerio was unemployed and lived alone in a simple house on the outskirts of Pocone. Neighbors reported that he left early in the morning and only returned late in the afternoon, but no one could say exactly where he had been during the day. The police found some saddle parts at his residence that could have belonged to the missing horses, but Valerio claimed to have bought them from a traveling merchant months earlier. A third suspect was Cassio Quingra, a distant cousin of the Nakamuras and a potential heir to part of the farm if something happened to Sofia, and Rava Cassio had always shown envy toward his cousin's success and made malicious comments about how they did not deserve the family inheritance. He had serious financial problems, owed considerable sums to loan sharks in Campo Grande, and had unsuccessfully tried to obtain loans, using the expectation of inheritance as collateral. On May 15th, Cassio claimed he spent the whole day fishing, alone in a distant creek, but could not provide witnesses to confirm his story. The investigation revealed that he knew the farm's routine in detail and was aware that Sofia and Rav often went to inspect the more remote areas of the property. By themselves, as the investigation progressed, Officer Osmar Braganca collected evidence that made the case more complex. A more detailed analysis of the tracks revealed that the horses had stopped abruptly at a certain point on the road, as if something had frightened the animals. Marks on the ground suggested a possible struggle or violent movement, but there was no blood or other definitive signs of a crime. The fence that the siblings were supposed to repair was found intact, raising doubts about the real reason for their trip. Farm employees began to question whether the siblings had truly gone to inspect the fence or if they had another destination in mind. During a more meticulous search of the region, investigators found fragments of fabric caught in tree branches, identified as part of the clothing Sofia was wearing on the day of her disappearance. The fragments were located about 2 kilometers from the main road, in a dense area of vegetation, which would have required a forced walk to reach. This discovery changed the course of the investigation, suggesting that the siblings may have been forced to leave their horses and continue on foot to that area. Forensic analysis of the fragments revealed no signs of blood, but it confirmed that they had been violently torn from the garment. The clues were piling up, but the mystery continued. If you're trying to solve this case with me, leave your theory in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The investigation took a new turn when a local fisherman, Nabucco Marinelli, approached the police claiming to have important information about the case. Nabucco explained that, on the afternoon of May 15th, while fishing in a pond near the disappearance area, he heard screams and the sound of frightened horses coming from the direction of the forest. Being alone, and with it getting dark, he chose not to investigate at that moment, but the sound stayed in his memory. According to his account, the screams seemed to be from a woman calling for help, followed by male voices shouting orders he couldn't fully understand. The fisherman estimated that the sounds came from an area between the main road and the place where the fabric fragments were later found. Nabucco Marinelli's testimony brought a new perspective to the case and led the investigators to focus their efforts on the specific area mentioned by the fisherman. During an intensive search in that region, the team found more disturbing evidence. Tire tracks from a motorcycle on a secondary trail connecting the forest area to the main road. The tracks were recent and did not match any vehicles known to the farm staff. This discovery suggested that a third person, besides the missing siblings, had been present in the region during the disappearance. The investigation of the motorcycle evidence led the police to discover that Igor Toriani owned a motorcycle of the same model that left the tracks found. Confronted with this information, Igor initially denied having used the vehicle that day, but later admitted to having surveyed the area on the morning of May 15th. According to his version, he wanted to personally check the contested boundaries of the property to prepare his defense for the legal case. Igor insisted that he did not encounter Sofia and Ravi during his visit to the area, and that he left the region before noon to head to Cuiaba. The police requested a technical examination of the motorcycle, which revealed traces of mud and vegetation consistent with the location where the tracks were found. At the same time, an investigation into Valerio Grimaldi revealed inconsistencies in his alibi. A witness reported seeing a man resembling Valerio walking down the road leading to the Nakamura farm around 10 a.m. on May 15th. The witness was not absolutely certain about the identification, but the physical description matched Valerio's characteristics. When confronted, Valerio changed his initial story and admitted to having walked through the area that day, but claimed he was simply looking for work on neighboring farms. The police found a detailed map of the Nakamura property in his house, with handwritten notes indicating the most frequently used routes by the owners and employees. The investigation into Casio Coimbra also yielded important revelations. Phone records showed that he had called Sofia several times in the weeks leading up to the disappearance, trying to convince her to intervene with her father to secure a family loan. Sofia had refused the request, and according to farm staff, she had been concerned about her cousin's insistence and increasingly desperate behavior. On May 14th, the day before the disappearance, Casio was seen in downtown Pocon buying ropes and other materials that could be used to restrain people. When questioned about the purchases, he claimed he was preparing equipment for fishing, but he could not satisfactorily explain the need for so many ropes for this activity. 2 years passed without the case being solved, and the investigation began to cool down. The families of the missing remained hopeful that Sofia and Ravi would be found alive. However, the investigators internally began to consider the possibility of homicide. Officer Osmer Braganca was transferred to another district, and the case was handed over to the deputy delegate Daniel Amamoto, who decided to review all the evidence with a fresh perspective. Daniel realized that the investigation had focused too much on the 3 main suspects, possibly neglecting other lines of inquiry. During his review of the case, Officer Daniel Yamamoto noticed a piece of information that had been overlooked. Previously, in the days leading up to the disappearance, some farmers in the region reported seeing strange men circulating through their properties, claiming to be conducting environmental research. These men wore uniforms that appeared official and carried measuring equipment, but never properly identified themselves or presented convincing documentation regarding their activities. Witnesses described a group of 3 men, apparently coordinated, who seemed particularly interested in the larger, more prosperous properties in the area. The new line of investigation led to the discovery that these men were part of a criminal group specializing in rural kidnappings, operating in Mato Grosso and neighboring states. The group would conduct detailed reconnaissance of their victims before acting, studying routines, vulnerable points, and escape routes. Their methodology included wearing fake uniforms to justify their presence on the properties and collecting information about the financial situation of the targeted families. Officer Daniel discovered that other similar cases had occurred in nearby areas, always involving young people from wealthy rural families who mysteriously disappeared during routine activities on farms. 8 years after the disappearance, in 2011, a police operation in Goiás dismantled a gang specializing in rural kidnappings. During an interrogation, one of the criminals in custody mentioned a case that occurred in the Pantanal of Mato Grosso, involving 2 siblings who were kidnapped and murdered after the family failed to pay the demanded ransom. The criminal provided details that matched the disappearance of Sofia and Ravi, including the approximate date and location of the farm. According to his account, the siblings were taken to a temporary hideout in the forest, but were eventually killed when the ransom negotiation failed due to delays in communication with the family. The information obtained in Goiás led the authorities in Mato Grosso to officially reopen the case and organize a new search operation in the area indicated by the criminal. The area mentioned was about 30 kilometers from where Sofia and Ravi were last seen, in a dense forest region that had not been adequately explored during the initial searches. The new search involved more advanced equipment, including specially trained search dogs for locating human remains and ground-penetrating radar. In December 2013, exactly 10 years after the disappearance, the search operation finally yielded results. The search dogs identified a suspicious area in a natural clearing surrounded by dense vegetation. Careful excavations revealed human remains buried about 1.5 meters deep. Preliminary analysis indicated that the remains were of 2 skeletons, one female and one male, with ages consistent with Sofia and Ravi at the time of their disappearance. Along with the remains, personal items were found that the family later identified as belonging to the missing siblings, including a silver bracelet that Sofia always wore and a watch that had been a birthday gift for Ravi. Forensic analysis confirmed that the remains were indeed those of Sofia and Ravi Nakamura. Examination of the bones revealed signs of trauma consistent with injuries caused by a sharp object, suggesting that the siblings were victims of homicide. Investigation of the crime scene found evidence that the bodies had been buried shortly after death, probably within 48 hours of their disappearance. The burial location, in a difficult-to-access area far from the routes normally used by locals, indicated planning and knowledge of the region by the criminals. With the discovery of the bodies and the information provided by the criminal in Goiás, the police were able to partially reconstruct the events of May 15, 2003. According to the investigation, Sofia and Ravi were approached by members of the gang while heading to inspect the damaged fence. The criminals forced the siblings to abandon their horses and took them on foot into the forest, where they maintained contact with other members of the group to coordinate the ransom request. The Nakamura family never received any communication from the kidnappers, possibly due to issues in coordinating the criminal group or fear that the intense police searches would make the operation too risky. The 3 original suspects in the investigation, Igor Toriani, Valerio Grimaldi, and Cassio Quingra, were formally exonerated of charges related to the disappearance and death of the Nakamura siblings. The investigation concluded that their presence in the area during the disappearance period was an unfortunate coincidence that complicated the initial investigations. Igor was cleared of any suspicion related to the case, although his legal dispute with the Nakamura family continued in the courts. Valerio managed to rebuild his life and found work on another farm in the region. Cassio was advised to seek professional help for his financial and family relationship issues. The discovery of the bodies brought relief, but also renewed grief to the Nakamura family. Geraldo Nakamura, who had kept hope of finding his children alive during all those years, was finally able to perform the proper farewell rituals. The bodies of Sofia and Ravi were transported to Campo Grande, where they were given a dignified burial in a ceremony that brought together hundreds of friends and family. The case became a milestone in the discussion about rural security in Mato Grosso and led to the implementation of preventive measures on farms in the region. The gang responsible for the kidnapping and murder of the Nakamura siblings was partially dismantled, but some members remained at large. The leader of the group, identified as Ronaldo Takahashi, was arrested in 2014 during an operation in Mato Grosso do Sul. Ronaldo confessed his involvement in the crime and provided additional details about the operation that victimized Sofia and Ravi. According to his testimony, the original plan was to keep the siblings alive until the ransom was paid. But the intensity of the police searches and the constant presence of helicopters in the region caused the group to panic and decide to eliminate the victims. The trial of Ronaldo, Takashi, and other gang members took place in 2015, resulting in convictions for aggravated homicide, kidnapping, and criminal association. Ronaldo was sentenced to 35 years in prison in a closed regime, which was within the legal parameters in Brazil for such crimes. The other members of the group received sentences ranging from 20 to 30 years in prison. The families of the victims expressed satisfaction with the convictions, although they recognized that no punishment could compensate for the loss of Sofia and Ravi. The resolution of the Nakamura siblings case highlighted the importance of persistence in criminal investigations and the cooperation between different police agencies. The joint work between the police from Mato Grosso and Goiás was crucial in breaking the silence that had surrounded the case for more than a decade. The discovery of the bodies also provided emotional closure for the family and allowed the local community to finally understand what had happened to the two young people who disappeared that May morning in the Pantanal. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. If you liked the case, click like and write in the comments where you're listening from. Also, make sure to watch the next video.